Officer for National Union of Students in the UK. I just want to give a brief overview of the voting situation in the UK, which is quite significantly different to any other kind of European country in terms of voting arrangements. So, as you might have heard, UK is probably one of the only countries in Europe that gives voting rights in general elections and local elections to citizens of Commonwealth countries, which are countries that were previously colonised by Britain, and it has quite a long tradition in that sense. So out of about 3.5 million migrant population, non-British population living in the UK, about 1.5 million of them are from Commonwealth countries. So about a third of the migrant community in the UK has the right to vote in general elections. They can, basically the Commonwealth population in the UK can significantly change the outcome of a close election. It can be a difference between a Conservative Party government or a Labour government. Coming up to the 2015 election, which the Conservatives won a majority, the right-wing media and political parties were pointing out as much as they could that, look, these people, a lot of them don't live here, are not going to live here for the future, but they have the right to decide who runs this country. They can change their votes completely, and it's unfair, and we need to get rid of this vote. And it was interesting because what they were doing, they were actually letting a lot of Commonwealth citizens that had no idea they have the right to vote actually learn that they can now vote through the right-wing media, which was quite phenomenal by itself. But so, for example, in my own area, I was trying to convince as many students that are in the UK from the Commonwealth countries to register to vote. The estimate is about 200,000 to 300,000 students would be able to vote, and some of them are concentrated in areas that are very heavily contested between two different parties, so they could actually change who gets elected, just those Commonwealth students. Of course, we weren't that successful because there is no mechanism whatsoever in the UK to raise awareness about the right to vote for Commonwealth citizens. And there is no advocacy work, there is no advertising. It is up to left-wing activists really to kind of ensure that these people know they have the right to vote, which in practice it might be a very positive form of engaging migrants in the political process, but in practice it's not really making much of a difference. In terms of European migrants, like everywhere else, can vote in local elections, but not in general elections, but also can vote in European elections. Commonwealth citizens can vote in local elections, general elections, but not in the European election. But still, the major problem exists that about 2/3 of the migrant population don't have the right to vote in anything. And that is the problem that we're facing right now, but it's not necessarily something that anyone, unfortunately, is talking about in the UK because of the recent attacks of the right wing on the right of Commonwealth citizens to vote. So a lot of people are just keeping quiet. So at least that is not scrapped, because the concern is if now people start talking about everyone have a right to vote in local elections, then Commonwealth citizens might lose the right to vote as well, which would, at least in theory, would have more of a negative impact on the representation of migrants in the UK. One is the kind of right to vote for people from ex-colonized countries in the country. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's a very positive thing. The criticism you will get if you go down that route would be the citizens of France don't have a reciprocal right in those countries. So, for example, if you say all Algerians that live here can vote here, the French people in Algeria would not be able to vote, and the right wing would point out that that is a very unfair system to have. I think the easy answer to that is that, well, France wasn't colonized by Algeria. France, even today, has economic impact, and with the policies that pass in France would have a direct impact on citizens of Algeria living in Algeria. And the legacy of colonialism throughout the world is a legacy that lasts for centuries. Therefore, it's not necessarily doing the people of ex-colonies a favor, but is actually giving them what is their right, because their country is, up until today, affected by the policies of this country. The second point that I would just like to raise and finish on is that just purely giving the right to any minority in a country is never enough. It can literally make zero difference if you give the people the right, but with that doesn't come the financial backing of the government to promote those rights and make sure that people know how to utilize them and what kind of impact they can have on the host country. So I think these two in conjunction can probably be quite useful for the French activists trying to get the right to vote. But also similarly, if you guys have made any improvements in the right to vote in local elections for non-citizens from anywhere outside Europe, I'll be very interested to kind of like link up and try to take that to the UK as well, because unfortunately it's not a debate that is in the centre of the kind of left's activities. Thank you very much.